Since we did our first breakfast meeting, think about it. A company called Oracle bought Sun. A company called WebCloud was founded. The same company went into the Intel family. A company called Xyratex got back the assets for Lustre from Oracle. The two platforms, OpenSFS and EOFS, were founded. The members joined in. We set up in a joint way the Lustre user group, the LAD. We did joint board meetings between OpenSFS and EOFS. And the goal of all of that is to strengthen the Lustre community, to make it a safe journey for users as well as for developers who work for Lustre towards the future, and to give back the reliability Lustre needs to be the I/O system of choice. That's why we're all together. That's why we get out so early of our hotel rooms and join together to make that all happen. I would like to thank my friend Frank Bethgen, who is a member of the board of administrators of EOFS, to lead that breakfast meeting in a very special way. Normally we have our panelists and they just give a short presentation and talk. This time, Frank is not only the moderator, but he's a kind of leader of a hot seat situation. What we wanted to create for this morning is that the users of Lustre, especially the big centers, and those who develop solutions, are sitting together, and the users will let us know whether the developers fulfill their wishes. I said we prepare Lustre's future in a joint way. We do that together from EOFS side. I do it together with my colleague Jacques-Charles Foucrier, who is the director as well as me in EOFS. And we do it jointly with our friends in OpenSFS, especially with Galen Shipman. He became recently the chairman of the board of OpenSFS. Welcome and congratulations, Galen. So, may I ask you, Galen, to come up, say a couple of words to the audience, to wake him up. He's playing a double role this morning. He's not only the one representing OpenSFS, but also the one being on the panel from Oak Ridge National Lab in the United States. And we too, Galen and myself, we have one vision. For us, the Lustre community is the platform which is driving Lustre towards the future. But the community is not alone. We see a strong triangle. The triangle is the community, the triangle is the users, and another part of that triangle is a strong participation of industry, as we have it with Intel, with Xyratex, and with others. And to keep that triangle in balance is our mission, and we hope that we do it in a sense of openness and in the sense of a community spirit. Again, thank you so much for coming this morning. Enjoy coffee, enjoy what you have for breakfast to eat, and enjoy what you hear from the panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great. Just a couple of quick comments. As I think Hugo stated it quite well. Our main goal with EOFS and OpenSFS is really to drive community adoption of Lustre as a technology, to increase the broadness of Lustre's impact beyond HPC into enterprise, into some of the big data markets. And to make that happen, we need users, we need vendors, we need the entire ecosystem working together to project a common platform, a common message, to stabilize, to add the feature sets that are required, the manageability aspects of Lustre that's required to make it have a broad impact across the entire community. And I think it's fairly exciting times for this community. We've just recently released Lustre 2.4, with major new features funded by OpenSFS and other major centers and contributions from around the world. We see contributions coming in from every corner of the globe now to the Lustre tree. It's now a true community open source development project, which it never had been before. So I think Lustre is now in a situation where it's actually a much more healthy community than it ever has been. And 3 years ago, we didn't see that. So I think it's a testament to the hard work by folks like Brent Orda, by the people at Zyratex, but also by the community. And Eric Barton in particular, as the actual, one of the main developers. And Mark, that's actually Mark Seeger. I think Eric's saying it. But the core developers. The core developers from Zyratex, the core developers from Intel, and the developers from across the entire ecosystem. So thank you all for coming. Thanks to the audience. Thank you to the panel. Thank you, Frank, for putting this together. And I'll go put my other hat on now as a user and small contributor to the Lustre file system at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Thank you all. Oh, one last plug. Please join us at the OpenSFS EOFS booth party. That's tonight or this afternoon at 4 o'clock. Booth number 515. It's the third of our series of events here at ISC. Starting yesterday with our community ball, today with the breakfast meeting, and then we'll have a nice booth party, and I think beer will be provided. So enough beer. So please do join us. Thank you all.
Thanks, Hugo, Gail, thanks. So, time to get started. What I'd like to do is all the panelists to come up with a very, very short introduction, maximum of 2 minutes. Who they are. Most of you are well known, I think, but I just want to be fair to the audience. So I want you to say your name and then the organization you're representing and what the organization does in the context of Lustre. There's a certain scheme, so I thought about this the past days. What was a good way to set up the panel? And it goes from one extreme to the other extreme here. On the left side, we have the real end users. So those are really depending on the function and the features of Lustre. They are not doing it. That's a statement here. My side might be wrong. Not doing a lot in terms of developing source code, but they're heavily dependent on Lustre as a functioning system. Then as we move towards the center of the panel, we have also big users, end users of Lustre, but they also to some extent act as developers, write source code, add features. And then moving more to the right side here, we have vendors that provide Lustre-based solutions, and at the far right we have 2 core developers that really contribute and to some extent also own the source code and, last but not least, the legal rights, and probably also Hugo is probably better in explaining what that means, the Lustre logo and the name. So that's the way the panel is set up. I think we get started here at the right side. Eric, okay. Say your name, the company, and then what is your core function in the context of Lustre?
Hi, I'm Eric Barton. I've been a developer for Lustre since 2002. And I am the technical lead of the team at Intel. The group that I head consists of most of the core Lustre developers that have been developing Lustre since its inception through Cluster File Systems, Sun Microsystems, Oracle, and now Intel. And one of our main issues really is to ensure the reason that we started Climb Cloud and the reason that we're happy now to be the high performance data division at Intel is that we think the most important issue for Lustre is that its end customers have choice and that it remains an open source file system. We see that stability of the file system and feature development has continued and is getting better and better. We are very happy now that the community is supporting us and we see a very bright future ahead for Lustre.
Thanks, Eric.
So I'm Torben Kling Petersen. I work for Cyratex as a principal architect. Cyratex is a company that is trying to develop highly integrated Lustre solutions where hardware is manufactured by us and everything in between. So we do have a very large team developing not only Lustre features but also management features for Lustre and the surrounding systems, as well as a lot of the support that's needed to be able to deliver these kind of systems. It is true that we did liberate the Lustre trademark and everything else from Larry's clutches at Oracle. But I do want to reinforce that even though we might have the right to the name, we don't actually own the source code. That is the community, and I think that's an important addition to what's been said so far. The fact that we did this is only because we did not think that it had a good home at Oracle. We wanted to get it back into the community. Outside that, we have no intention of doing anything with that trademark or the name or anything else, even though we happen to be yet another commercial company in
Thanks. DDN.
Okay, I'm Jeff Denworth, VP of Marketing at DDN. And DDN, for those of you that don't know, Data Direct Networks is a 15-year-old manufacturer of high-end storage platforms for data-intensive computing. We've been in the Lustre game since 2002 or 3. It predates me, but certainly a long-time participant in the Lustre community. I think when we talk about DDN's value to the community, it first is kind of built upon a very highly engineered storage stack that we built purposefully for the Lustre file system to accelerate Lustre environments. And today, that platform is in some ways the leading platform for Lustre systems in the marketplace, powering a number of top 10, top 100 systems around the world. We've evolved our solution approach to Lustre in the marketplace after having spent literally millions of dollars in the Lustre ecosystem towards support dollars, which ultimately become development dollars in a lot of cases. The platform now features a fully integrated appliance management toolkit, virtualized within our storage array products, and tied very tightly to a cloud storage product that we have called WAS, where you can enable Lustre publication and disaster recovery across the wide area network. So part of an extended vision that we have for the product that is complemented by some of the work that we're doing for Intel with respect to the Fast Forward agreement, but certainly heavily invested in Lustre in a number of dimensions.
Thanks.
Great. My name is Barry Golding. I'm the Vice President of Storage and Data Management at Cray. Cray has, just like DDN and with DDN, been involved with the Lustre community since about 2002, 2003, working with CFS to create what I would call one of the first scalable productive installations of Lustre at the Red Storm installation, evolving that over the last 10 years to provide the most scalable and fastest implementations of Lustre in a productive environment with our customers. And that's been a collaboration, and Cray has really has understood from the very beginning that Lustre is a collaborative engagement. whether it's with a company like CFS or Sun that had Lustre, or whether it's with the community now in OpenSFS, it's also a collaboration with the customers that we have. Because when you're trying to scale like we do, we typically are more interested in the high end of Lustre. You really have to engage with the customers to reach those scalability limits. One of our achievements this year is we actually installed the fastest Lustre installation in the world, achieving at least once 1.4 terabytes per second on a single, on an aggregate 3 Lustre file systems at once. And I think, we look forward to many sites being able to do that over the next few years, because that really shows the scalability of Lustre. It doesn't show the productivity of Lustre necessarily, though. And I think that's one of our key challenges. Over the next couple of years, we have to take and ensure that commercial companies and entities can utilize Lustre in a productive manner. And I think that's one of the key challenges we see, and Cray will be right there implementing Lustre from end to end, including the storage with our partners at Zyratex, DDN, and others, to make sure we are driving a productive Lustre environment for the customer.
Thanks. Thanks, Barry.
All right. Good morning. I'm Brian Stespinski. I'm the CTO of Livermore Computing at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. So like Eric at the end, I will not try and do a Mark Seeger impression. Not that many people know about Mark, I guess.
We're grateful.
Anyway, so Livermore, as Frank mentioned, is a very large user of Lustre. We have 10 globally mounted Lustre file systems. The most recent one that we stood up is called Grove. It's a 55 petabyte file system. And so that's actually driven a lot of recent activity at Livermore. So in addition to having a large installation, we actually have 4 full-time Lustre developers. And we've been very much involved in the effort to provide a generic file system layer underneath the basic Lustre server, so being able to replace LDiskFS with ZFS. And that's now available in the main 2.4 distribution. Going forward, we plan to continue to be very actively involved in Lustre. We're looking at ways to reduce the dependence on hardware resilience further, so that's some of the things we already get out of using ZFS. We're actively working on participating in the Fast Forward, working with Intel and others on that.
Next speaker, thank you.
Hello everybody, I'm Aurélien de Grémont from CEA, French agency. We are using Lustre on our computing centers for...
You should say a very large, huge French agency.
As French said, so
Yes.
very large French agency. We are using Lustre on our computing center since 2005. We have now something around 800 gigabytes per second aggregate on all our Lustre file systems. So Lustre is a very key solution for our infrastructure. So we are really committed to it. So we are mostly users. We are also developing around Lustre. We are developing tools for Lustre like Shine or Robinhood. And we are also developing Lustre HSM binding solution with Intel. So to add a couple system between Lustre and different HSM backends, which is something which is really expected by the community. We are involved in different other aspects in of the Lustre community, and CEA is also one of the founding members of EOFS.
Thanks, Aurélien. Gail.
Yes, I'm Galen Shipman from Oak Ridge National Laboratory. I'm Director of the Computed Data Environment for Science and Data Systems Architect. Oak Ridge National Laboratory is the Department of Energy's largest science and energy laboratory. We have about 5,000 employees, and we primarily, our main focus areas are material science, neutron science, energy broadly speaking, high-performance computing, and national security. We use Luster in all these different areas. We use Luster for obviously our large-scale systems such as Titan, #2 on the top 500 list this year. We are currently in the phases of upgrading the parallel file system. We started in 2005 deploying a center-wide Luster file system, contributing largely to the development of the architecture, I should say, and some of the initial funding for the Elnet routing infrastructure that allowed us to bridge the high-performance computing environment to a more commodity interconnect, such as InfiniBand, with very high performance. We developed Spider that allowed us to achieve 240 gigabytes per second with 10 petabytes of capacity. We're now upgrading that environment to approximately 1 terabyte per second plus with over 30 petabytes of capacity. But we also use Luster in other areas of our facility. We're using it to store some of the highest value data sets at our site, which come from the Spallation neutron source. This is a $1.8 billion national facility. It's the highest energy neutron source in the world. So we're seeing Luster move beyond HPC into large-scale data environments where the data is very valuable and we need to maintain it for the long term, which I think is a testament to the improvements of Luster.
Thanks, Gail. Klaus.
Good morning. I'm Klaus Wolkersdorfer. I'm head of the HPC division in the Jülich Supercomputing Center. And at the same time, I'm the vice president of the EFS board. Jülich used to be, since 2003, used to be a GPFS shop. We had an IBM computer and we used GPFS all the time. But when we installed the second line of supercomputers, an Intel-based line, our Europa system in 2009, we had a strong belief we should go to a different direction, not to leave open the field to IBM only. And so we installed Luster in our Europa system, and not only for the scratch data, but also for the home data. I can say in the first year with Luster 181, we had quite a lot of problems. But when we upgraded a year later to 184, then it was a stable system, and we run this up to now. When it occurred 2.5 years ago, I think, that the Sun was overtaken by Oracle, it seemed that Luster would go down because they didn't support Luster at all, Oracle. And so Jülich had a very strong belief we should support this open file system very much, and so we initiated the foundation of EFS. Jülich was the first who made a workshop over there, and a lot of others also, and it was finally successful. I think this is a very good sign, and as we see in the very recent years, it got a lot of speed again, and that's very good to hear. For the future, just one more sentence. The Europa system comes to its life cycle end of next year, and so we currently installed a prototype system for our successor, and we will install Luster. We have already, I think since 2 weeks, installed a Luster 2.1, and we also will try 2.4, but we will see what we finally will have in production.
Thanks, Klaus. Roland.
So my name is Roland Pfeiffer, and I'm working for the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. We have about 9,000 employees, and we are located in the southwest of Germany. We have different Luster systems. Actually, I just calculated, and I'm now doing administration for 10 different Luster file systems. They come from different vendors with different storage hardware, but these systems are mid-range, I would say, so one magnitude below what the big sites are having. And something special also for us is, since we also have mid-range clusters, so they are in size about 300 to 600 nodes now, we have one common InfiniBand fabric where we attach all these clusters and all the file systems in order to be able to mount them on the different clusters. Users can directly access it, and we don't have to use Elnet routers. And I believe that for the mid-range systems, that's a pretty good solution. Yeah, I really believe also that Lustre is doing very well. I've seen this condition in the companies and so on, and really congratulate everybody who worked with that. I believe it shows the strength of the community and the strength of the open source and things like that. So you also really have the choice between vendors, so there's competition between hardware vendors. That's also very important, I believe. And so that's really good. Things we had to struggle with during the last years was actually it was mainly the storage hardware and mid-range storage hardware which
We come to this.
Okay.
Thanks, but this is a very nice summary. We will come back to this shortly. Let's just finish the first round with tech.
Hi, I'm Tommy Minyard. I'm from the Texas Advanced Computing Center, where I'm Director of Advanced Computing Systems there. We've been running Lustre file systems for about the last 7.5 years or so. We currently have about 20 petabytes in 8 different Lustre file systems that we run. We support it on all of our large-scale production clusters. It's been one of the key technologies that we've adopted and supported at TAC. We've also developed some tools in terms of monitoring, identifying users that are beating up on the file systems and maybe not acting as they should. We're looking forward to deploying about a 20 petabyte file system here that will be our global file system, adopting some of the similar approaches that Livermore and Oak Ridge have taken by mounting it on all of our production systems. So moving forward, we see a bright future for Lustre, and we want to continue to support the community, and we support about, I think right now, about 5,000 different users on our systems through the National Science Foundation for open science research.
And Tommy is also the community director of the Open Scalable File Systems.
Good. So the audience is now aware who are the players, and I think it's a really impressive lineup what we have here. And you could also see, at least that's my 10 categories. And it appears we are all happy. Let's say we came through the valley of tears, and you know it's going upwards with Lustre. So having said that, we actually say thank you very much. Let's have breakfast, and that's it. Now, for sure there are some issues, and I would like to use the panel now and include, if someone feels here she or he has a good comment or actually a question, just raise your hand. I think I'd like to categorize the issues and topics we want to address into a couple of segments. The first segment will be the current status and issues and problems, because we have end users, and actually I would like to start with the end users and say, so as it appears we are all happy, but what are your concerns? Roland already was about to get started here and said something, but I would like now to move backwards and ask Tommy. You have a real big site. You said talk about 5,000 users. So all the good news seen, what are the bad news? And what would you like to see? And where are issues really the other side of the panel have to address?
So some of our challenges recently have been just identifying users that maybe aren't using the file system in the best way. Recently we've had problems where users have opened and closed many files, each iteration in a code that worked well on their own workstation, but didn't work so well at scale on a large-scale Lustre file system and caused some headaches. Right now, the biggest challenge really is probably metadata. The metadata servers, are a little bit overwhelmed. They can't necessarily perform as many IOPS as we would like to see. I know that there's developments in process right now that hopefully address those limitations that we currently see. In terms of other challenges, right now we run multiple versions of Lustre file system. It is a little bit challenging to be able to support the multiple versions and the interoperability. And of course, once we deploy a cluster, we normally don't like to make big changes on it. And so we're continuing to run 1.8 revisions on several of our older systems. On Stampede, we did deploy 2.1, and of course, a system of that size, we did trigger a few more little bugs. We've been working with Intel to reproduce them and hopefully identify and fix those problems. But Lustre's come a long ways from our original deployments of it. And I think from our point of view, the biggest thing we try to do is monitor the file systems. Monitor very closely about which jobs are doing what type of activity, and identifying users that may not be using it efficiently, and work with them to improve their codes.
Roland, you already came up with, would you confirm or contradict, or would you say, oh, and I have to add something here?
First I want to confirm, because that's also one thing I'm frequently doing, looking at the file system and checking if it behaves well, or if not, I'm looking which users are doing which things. And I'm also checking the last error messages, and that's a way to find it out, because if users are using it inefficiently, or if there are Lustre bugs, then you usually get Lustre error messages, and both you want to know. So to take a look at that makes sense. And one thing I want to point out or want to add is that we recently recognized that users nearly have no chance to find out what they are actually doing on the files and how this ends up on the file system. And that's something I really would like to see in the future. We have to develop some tools, for example, to provide them some I/O counters or whatever. So per job, possibly. So it would be ideal to have some I/O counters per job, for example, to let him know, the user know that he has done small I/O, which is bad. And some users don't know when I speak with them, and they nearly have no chance to find out. So that's something which is really important.
Talk to me.
Excellent. No, excellent. I think this is really, really good. And then I want the right side, specifically the right side, really to listen carefully and actually take notes. No, Roland, yeah.
There are other things maybe, but I don't know. One important thing is to have really stable underlying storage hardware. We actually used some mid-range storage, and we had lots of problems with that, starting from silent data corruption and so on. These systems are actually installed 100,000 of times, but if you use it on a parallel file system, you get just newer problems. And that's really the foundation and the source of lots of problems. And the problem with that is also, if you have such problems, Lustre is blamed for it because it's a Lustre file system, but it's not a Lustre problem, it's a storage problem.
I think this is an excellent point. You know, when you're trying to address some Lustre issues, but the underlying hardware is causing problems, then you are lost in the jungle, right? So you know, how can you figure out what is causing what? Klaus, JSC's comments.
I can confirm.
You also you confirm.
I would go into the Valley of Tears a little bit, and I think 4 months ago we lost files in the Luster file system, because in the underlying storage subsystem we lost an enclosure, which should never occur. Really never, and only Uli has this problem. I hear this very often. different vendors, really. But never mind. I also would like to say that about missing features and something like that. I think when we decided to get to Luster, we had a cooperation at that time with Sun to get very important features. For instance, the data end-to-end security and the declustered RAID thing to have it to have a very quick rebuild time. But this could not be done because of the overtaking from Oracle, and so up to now this feature we really would like to have is not yet in Luster. I know there are works on it, but we really want to have it yesterday and not tomorrow.
Oh, okay, that's an interesting thing. So you're thinking about features, and then we'll come back to the one who can provide features. Or I'd like to use this opportunity, because we have for sure Luster users here in the audience, and just ask one or two, if you want to contribute, from the user community. Actually, who is a Luster user here? Oh yeah. Quite few. But is there anything of importance you would like to add beyond what the three end users have said? So it appears that's pretty complete. Okay, and then be aware, you can always interrupt and say, hey, I disagree completely, or I have something important to add. So, this should be pretty open. Good. So, there are some very interesting takeaways that again fall into different categories. One thing, what I'm seeing has more to do with the administration of Luster, and there are two interesting components. One is the view the system administrator has. That's something I got from you. What are my users doing here? And, does it make sense, or do they need some education? But I think it was, Roland who also brought up an interesting point that the users inside Luster have, at least today, difficulties to understand what they are doing. Yeah? So Luster tries to hide something. So those are two very, very interesting points, and I would now like to move to the actual, the owners here of the Luster source trees, and we have all seen those roadmaps. So, and then just come up with a very, very quick statement. Is this being understood and being addressed? So are there really developments ongoing, potentially, done by the partners here, the larger side that are involved, to address those issues?
So,
Eric.
File system development is different from any other sort of software development. The reason being that every other subsystem in a data center relies on the file system. It's the only thing that's got to live through every disaster. Your data has to survive. And therefore, file system development timescales are much, much longer than any other sort of software development. So the features that we are delivering now in Luster 2.4 have been features that we have been thinking about and planning and carefully putting together over the last 5 years. It's been that long. Only now are we finally delivering clustered metadata, for example, something which was attempted 3 times in the early 2000s. And the reason that it wasn't successful previously was because of lack of sufficient foresight planning. So although people want to have features yesterday, it takes very, very careful planning to make sure that the features are developed in a progressive way that causes the tree to remain stable, and therefore gatekeeping the tree and ensuring that feature landings are very, very tightly controlled and that stability is maintained is one of the most important things.
So you were mentioning 2.4 as the version, I don't want to say that will fix a lot of things being addressed, but
Well, actually, I think you have to be careful. 2.4 is one of the largest code landings we've had in the last several years, and therefore necessarily new features destabilize the code base. And so you have to have a very good compromise between feature landings and ongoing stabilization effort.
Yeah, Tobin, that's a perfect timing for you actually also to add a comment here, because you also maintain source tree, and what's your point of view here, complementing what Eric just said?
Right, so Eric is totally right in the fact that all of these new addition does create a more complex environment to manage, to run, and to scale. And one of the things that Cyratex have been focusing on with some of the projects we have been involved in over the last year or two has been not only working with that code, but also running it at very large scales and fixing everything that breaks, and many things do break. So the biggest problem with a code base this large, and 2.4 is really going to be a challenge for all of us, is how do we actually make it to scale in a stable way? We know we can do it with 2.1.3, which is the kind of the leading 2.x version at the moment. We know we can do it with 1.8.6 and 1.8.7 because that's been around for a long time. 2.4 is a totally new playing field. That's going to take a lot of testing, but I think that the community, both on the user side and on our side, is really well geared to fix those problems as they come about. And that would be the benefit of the future going forward.
So that's an interesting comment and an interesting add-on, because now you're kicking around version numbers, right? I've heard a couple, is it 2.1 point something? Eric made this comment, and I think it's fair, about complexity, and said, okay, 2.4 will be a major step forward. What I could hear a little bit between the lines is a kind of an excuse, because it's so huge, it's so large, there's so many features. As soon as it's handed over to the end users, we might be in for a couple of surprises. And any comments on this, let's say, all those versions floating around and then moving towards maybe a more unified code base from the vendors here, because you're confronted, users might confront you with exactly those issues and say, hey, what would you recommend us to implement when you sell a large system? And then DDN here is also a vendor that has to provide something where your customers would expect that it is dead stable, because you're providing it as an appliance. Cyratex does the same, but you sell it as a packaged solution, and users expect probably from you never to have any issues.
So I would say the open source nature of the platform lends itself to a level of kind of understanding in the market that's well beyond what the appliance approach that Cyratex or DDN or any of the vendors bring to the table. People are watching these types of events, they're watching the roadmap, and they know exactly what's coming. So there's a duality. There's you have the users, and every single user wants stability, but they also, it's like, in the US we have this cereal called Frosted Mini Wheats. And on one side you have the frosted side, and the other side you have the not so tasty side. And so the frosted side of the user says, I want the most stable platform in the market, and then the other side says, well, but I also need this, and this feature. Right. And so it drives a discussion, which is interesting and kind of contravenes the appliance approach to some degree. So the interesting thing is that from an appliance perspective, there's a broader market opportunity for Lustre well beyond the the high-scale customers on this panel, and certainly the level of sophistication is a bell curve. So long as major features don't gate the requirements, such as Linux operating system versions or, let's say, networking updates, we can push an appliance, but in the back of every user mind is, I know I can do more with this platform, and let me see how much I can push the vendor. So it's a very, very difficult dance we do.
Well, thanks. Great.
I agree with Jeff. I think one of the risks that we always take with the file system with Lustre is that to have it in productivity in a production environment means that you do have expectations from the customer that it will be stable, and the more we try to push that into less experienced user bases, the more careful we have to be with the distributions that go into those less experienced user bases. So fortunately, because Lustre's a community, we have a range of people, as Jeff said, a bell curve of users, and I think what Cray, our philosophy is to actually encourage and work with some of our customers who are working directly with the community to install the latest versions and figure out what those bugs are. We do the same in-house. We bring in those latest versions. But we typically don't ship to customers the latest versions, and we have a very tight control over the Lustre environment. And that's primarily because they do expect from us production environments. I think it's even worse if you get down to small scale. And I know we all want, for the good of the community, good of Lustre, to really drive down to users that are completely inexperienced with Lustre. So we're going to have to come up with a way to do that that really de-risks Lustre. That's going to be a challenge. But overall, I agree. We've got to come up with a strategy that pushes some sites to the limit. They test, they debug at scale, and then brings back into the vast majority, the stable releases.
So the bell curve has been mentioned here, and the x-axis is actually user competence or user knowledge, sophistication, whatever it is, which is very interesting for a product, because as you just said, coming back to your comment and that, we carefully think about what is what user community are we selling into, what kind of user sophistication. That is, I think, pretty unique. Normally, you ship a product and say it works fine, and here we have a very, very complex product. So far what we are seeing, the lower the version number, obviously, the stability is a bit better, right? The higher the version number, there might be issues, but the good thing is there might be new features, right? So it's what I'm seeing here is a kind of balance between...
But what you say is not always true.
Oh,
so what you
please.
say, 181 was less stable than 184.
That's right.
So, and 185 was less stable than 184 also. So, you just have to know.
So that's an interesting comment. So, Eric, what's your response
I'll
here?
make a point here. When we started producing community releases at WAMCloud, we, for the first time in Lustre's history, made a very rigid distinction between feature releases and maintenance releases.
Okay.
Now, prior to that point, as we were developing code and fixing bugs, customers would be clamoring both for bug fixes and for features in new releases. And so those two things got mixed together, and the result was hard to control the stability. So now we are completely rigidly clear that feature releases occur when new features are added.
And not the bug.
From that point onwards,
No, they don't.
and from that point onwards,
That's a new way to say it.
maintenance releases only have bug fixes, so that stability then improves.
So so in future the plan is, this is a feature release, okay? This is the latest, greatest enhancement in terms of features, and then you throw it out to the user community, and you're waiting and say, oh, here are complaints and issues.
No. All of our development's happening in the community, as you know, right in front of everyone's eyes. We are doing this completely in public, but the important thing is really that the community tree, that's where we produce feature releases, and that is controlled and stability is maintained on that for new features. Vendors are then completely free to then create their own distributions from that.
I like it. You give it a very, very positive spin here. So,
But he conditions, the market with that. It's not like he's coming to us saying, you know, this is perfect. And when we get code drops from
no. At the end, here's an audience. Let's assume those are potential customers, and then at the end, I want all of them to get out of there and say, Lustre is the right thing to go with. So, but you had a good comment on what he just said.
Well, all I know is I hear our developers say that sometimes they think they're the only ones that bother to test their source code before they check it in.
Well, I would add, you know, when we look at, say, Lustre 2.4, right, we've made a lot of investment through OpenSFS and to the community tree to add new features that we need at scale, right? So there's issues of scale, which in some respects is a science project, right? We're going to 18,000 nodes, 300,000 cores on our system with a level of parallelism that most users will never encounter, right? And so by that very nature, we're going to expose issues in those latest features that we need to achieve that level of scalability that the rest of the user community will most likely never even encounter.
Right.
And many of the features that land at that level, they don't need that quickly because they're not encountering the same scalability challenges. So I think it actually lends itself quite nicely going forward that some of the largest sites will be on, you know, the bleeding edge, right? As we need the features, we'll bring them into our shop. We spend months sometimes testing, you know, and these test shots, a single test shot might cost $50,000 in terms of CPU hours, right? So it's non-trivial. But we'll get that software up to a level of stability on our platform that we can release it to our user community. The rest of the users at the mid-scale and at the lower scale never see that. We have Lustre deployments throughout Oak Ridge that are on the scale of a petabyte or hundreds of terabytes with thousands of up to 1,000 compute nodes, where we don't need the same feature sets that we need on a Titan, or that we need on a BlueGene, that we need on a BlueGene Q, such as at Lawrence Livermore. But what gets press often is the challenges of scale, because it's interesting to hear about and it's interesting to talk about. But I think we have to be careful because those challenges of scale aren't confronted by every user community. And so I think the way Eric has laid out development moving forward, with 2.1 being the maintenance release and that getting progressively more and more stable over time, without landing new, you know, XYZ feature to destabilize and allowing feature releases to move forward is the right approach.
Yeah, and I think what you just said addresses a very, very interesting point, because Lustre is a product with all the complexity we are seeing here and all these versions, and I'm talking here to the potential end user community, that is pretty unique, because at one point you have a product that works for a small data center, you said, you know, significantly less than a petabyte. At the same time, it is capable to basically provide services on the largest system you can imagine, the largest system on the planet. And that's pretty unique.
Yes.
I think it's unique because, I think it's actually fantastic, because you're not in this situation to say, oh, you have outgrown this product, you better start from scratch and evaluate another product. And then you have a zoo of different file systems. Lustre has this potential, and say, with all the issues we have seen, from small to ultra large, it is still Lustre. And I think that this is a very, very good takeaway here. And now, having said that, I would like to go a bit beyond the features we just talked about, monitoring. at the user level, monitoring at the administrative level, and I'm sure that the Veloster developers are fully aware of it. Let me come to those sites that are adding features. You talked about specific features that the ultra high-end normal users won't see. But there might be other features. I know that CA is doing some development, and I basically would like to have a few more comments from the feature developers. What are features you are working on that might be of interest to the community? HSM has been mentioned, that's coming. I assume you're all familiar with that, but it has also been mentioned the importance of storing very, very valuable data that were very expensive to generate. So is that something where there's a strength of Luster, or are there additional features? Resilience has been mentioned. Yeah, please.
Regarding what was said before regarding features and management and so on, I think there is a point which is not very in focus by the developers right now, except maybe for this Luster HSM feature, is management in the file system and data management and file system management. And we were talking about also reaching small sites, and I think it's something really important for Luster to be able to improve in these areas, to reach more and more, to be more easier to use. There is not a lot of developments ongoing in that way, even if there is it's true that current new features which are coming in Luster, development for them were starting a long time ago, but there is not enough new development starting right now to improve this area of managing your file system and managing your data in the file system. That's one of the reasons why at EA we started development on Luster HSM. There is also another aspect. Traditionally, Luster was used for Scratch file systems. Now it's becoming different. More and more people are using the Luster file system for different usage, not only Scratch.
As a home file system, actually.
As home, by example. It's tricky. And for us, by example, we are using as a high-speed cache in front of an HSM, and all this is different use of the file system. You don't have exactly the same needs and the same requirements, and so for that you need more management features rather than just performances. Stability is also a key point. So we started working on Luster HSM, so things are going quite well now, and we should have something available by the end of this year, I hope. And this project will help, I think, with some features which were added for it, to be able to develop other features for data management, like internal migration inside Luster for data and this kind of thing.
Thanks, Bronis. Any add-ons, comments?
Well, so we're interested in a lot of features kind of looking down the road sort of things. We're very concerned about how we're going to integrate things like burst buffers into the system. So that's really addressing our worries about how we're going to handle the changing bandwidth to compute ratios. We're also very interested in getting some of the work done under fast forward, other work under fast forward, like the HDF5 modifications.
Are you doing, I see your site, Lawrence Livermore, are you doing actually also development, real feature, are you developing features, writing code that could be inserted into the source tree, your site? Because I understand CA is definitely doing that,
Well, one of the big developments that
ZFS.
is ZFS. I mean,
You mentioned that
Yeah,
in the
I mentioned
initial
that
statement,
already. I
right?
mean, we're continuing to do development. I mean, we still have 4 developers working on Lustre, so we're doing a lot of different things in that. I think right now we're really concerned about getting the things that we've added to provide the stability that our users need on our production system. So that's our current focus internally.
Well, one thing I would add to Arleon's comment was that many of the main features that we can then build upon, that we need to be able to build upon to add manageability, improve manageability and even resiliency to the Lustre file system were undertaken by CEA. Right? So we're looking now in the next stages of OpenSFS development and our next stage of funding the community to add OST replication, OST migration. These are all features that the end user, the administrators of the system will realize, and in large degree it's because of some of the foundational work that CE has put forward.
So, here are the feature developers, here are the end users. Let's talk about how does the communication between the final implementers, how does that work? Because, at one point you have to hand over the features you have developed or have asked for, and you actually did some development. You have to hand it over to the owners of the, excuse me, the source tree, and how does that process really work? Is that,
Can I just correct you for 1 minute? When you say owners of the source tree, we're not the owners, the community owns the source.
Who is the community?
We are everyone here, all the contributors.
Yep.
Now, we at the moment are the gatekeepers
Okay.
of the community source
Good.
tree. Right,
Good.
but the community owns the source.
Okay, good. From a user's point of view, it's nice, excuse me, it's nice to know that you are the owner. At the end, if I'm aware of sites that actually say we will run it and implement it on our own hardware. So such a user could be one of you, could be one of our customers, would at one point need to go to someone who owns the code, or at least has a copy, and download it from the site, right? So it will probably address one of the gatekeepers, come to you and say, I want to have what is the best version, source version. We get a DVD or download it and say, this is version 2.4.0.1, and that's the best offering. Is this, or would you say, hey, what are you up to? No. Don't use 2.4 at this stage. You better use 1 point something, right? Or 2.x. Who would provide such a recommendation, and is it documented? Is this actually, is it well documented? Is this a feature release that is dead stable? Is this a maintenance release that is dead stable? Or is this a feature release with everything you can imagine? How does that work? And is this transparent enough? And this, coming back to my initial statement, if you develop something, how does it work? Until that set of features is available
So let's
in
be
the
clear.
source tree.
We have a release train model
Yeah.
for landing developments on the community tree, in which anybody who wants to submit contributions, there's a window during which contributions are accepted. Then there's a code freeze date during which contributions are landed and tested, and then finally there's release. The idea behind this all is that we produce regular releases, and that if a feature isn't ready in time for a particular release, then it has to skip to the next release. So it should be clear that we have a regular cadence of new features arriving, and we do the best job that we possibly can on stabilizing those. The major point of stabilizing the feature releases is not to produce stable releases for deployment in production, but to ensure that stability is good enough to enable onward code development. And that was a distinction that was not made clearly enough previously. Once you have a feature release, then you have to you choose a feature release that is the right set of features for you, and now you're thinking from the point of view of a vendor, say. They'll be cherry picking whatever features they want and integrating those from feature releases and providing their own maintenance release. We do this on behalf of the whole community. With OneCloud and now Intel maintenance releases, that's exactly what they were. And so we pick a particular feature release as the starting point of a maintenance release train. And it's the maintenance release trains that are the versions that are intended for deployment in production.
In terms of communication to the community, there's a community development working group within OpenSFS where we work in partnership with the OFS and members, both members of the organizations as well as the broader community, to define, in collaboration with the developers, what features land and where, based on requirements and priorities. We also communicate that through multiple avenues via the EOFS website, OpenSFS website, and Intel and Xyratex also publish these roadmaps. So we try our best to inform the community. Oftentimes, though, it's the in-vendor relationship that is very important, where the vendor is working with the customer, understanding the requirements, and then, as Eric indicated, providing the set of features that meet the requirements and the level of stability that they need.
So all that sounds pretty positive, and the release train you just mentioned, and also seems to, let's say, go down the tracks smoothly. Yeah. So let's come back to the end users, because you are. So this is a very, all those statements are very positive. Basically, it appears, and I'm taking this naive position here and saying, does it work? Oh yes, it works all fine. It's well documented. We do the very best we can. So you should be really happy, or are there issues you feel that needs to be addressed, or is there anything you feel that could be done better?
Yes.
Please.
So from our point of view, for the end users, if I were to recommend to another site or somebody that has not deployed Lustre, I would definitely recommend to stay with maintenance release as of now. The new versions, even we are pretty hesitant to deploy a version that doesn't end with a .1 or later at our site in production, because we know that there's a lot of bug fixes that occur between the various versions. So, but it is a bit of a challenge, because right now, of course, we want to make sure everybody's at the 2.x releases, because for upgrade path in future, that's where you want to be. And we're looking forward to the 2.4 maintenance release. It has several new features that we are interested in. But for a current site, definitely stick with the 2.1 maintenance release as of now. I know 2.16 is about to come out. Usually when they hit about the third number hits 1, 2, or 3, we feel pretty confident most of the bugs have been worked out and deploy it. But moving forward, though, we do try to feed back in some of the feature requirements and some of the pains that we experience in terms of deploying and administrating these.
Tommy, I really like this. Is let's say pretty good information to take away for a potential end user. This is a release you probably should stay with. And then if you have some experience, go to 2.4, right, because that will be loaded with new features. Roland.
Yeah, in addition, I would recommend everybody to stay with maintenance releases. But actually, there's one thing why it's not always possible, and that's support for new Linux or Red Hat or SUSE versions. And actually what we had a very, very stable 1.8 installations on our systems. But then we had to install /11 Service Pack 2, which is really using a very new kernel. And we asked the vendors, and they told us, oh, with 1.8 we will never support this. So we had to migrate the clients to version 2. But then, since clients with version 2 don't work with servers on version 8, we had to upgrade all servers too. So we had a very stable system, but we had one requirement, this feature to support new Linux conversions. And then we had to upgrade everything and go to a less stable version. So we still stay on the server side with the maintenance release with 2.1, but on the client side we had to install version 2.3 because that was the only version where the 11 Service Pack 2 was supported. And with that we actually ran into several problems. And these problems are now fixed, I believe, in 2.4. But that's something even in the mid-range in our system. Yeah.
Comments
Yeah.
here on exactly Roland's points.
Well, the one thing I would like to bring to the table here, and it really comes down to the discussion that Eric had earlier about feature releases and maintenance releases and new features coming into it. And unfortunately, people like Tommy and Roland is a big part of that problem. Because
it's for you to know that you're not part of the solution, but part of the problem, right?
So we just didn't have users.
Let me clarify, please. The reason why I see them as a problem is that they are very creative. They come up with new requests, and all of those requests sound really good to the developing community. It's just that we are not 100,000 developers. There are a subset of these,
right.
And we have to prioritize which one of these features to develop, and that needs to work within the interdependencies of all the other features in there. So the priority of getting those features in there means that sometimes we have to cut a little bit of corners, like supporting every single OS on the planet, etc. So, the fact that we have users that have requirements or wishes for certain things cannot always be accommodated, unfortunately, because we are not that big as a development organization. We are trying the best we can, but there are limits, right?
Tobin, well said. We're trying the best we can, and yes, we can. Now, I think we got during the panel, we got a pretty good overview where Lustre stands. So what I think we also have accomplished here, that you can see this enthusiasm, right? Across the board, between the end users, the very large users and developers, and then the gatekeepers. I will no longer use the term code owners, the gatekeepers. I like this. I'd like to close the panel with one or two remarks from the panel side. What is the future? Can Lustre go, given the status we are in right now, beyond being a product for the high-performance computing, the classic high-performance computing community? Can it actually evolve into a product that might be of interest more in the commercial space, right? You think big, think social media providers. You all know what I'm talking about. Think web service providers. So who is willing to make a few comments on that side? I think our vendors here. Yes? Didier. And then Craig. And then I hand it over to you. Please.
So our customer composition looks today, there's a pretty broad spectrum. We sell to social media companies. We sell to very large web services organizations.
What version?
Well, I'm not there yet.
Okay. So let us know.
We sell to financial services companies. We sell to manufacturers. We sell to other organizations. We don't sell Lustre to all these organizations. And in some cases, we do. So your question is can Lustre go much more broadly? And I think you need to ask the question, does it go very wide to a large number of organizations, or does it go to the highest levels of scale, which satisfies the panelists here, as well as potentially some of the large-scale web computing organizations? And I think the reality is that there's not enough resources to do both. And the imperatives that are given to the developer community are such that we know the direction it's going. It's going to the highest levels of scale. So I made a statement 2 days ago about how Lustre is not ready for the enterprise. I absolutely believe that. It doesn't mean it doesn't have applicability in the commercial space, but to the end that it's not ready for the enterprise, you don't see things like a kernel, a client that's in the kernel today, you don't see data protection features, you don't see any of the normal things that an enterprise IT manager would expect when they put a storage system on their network to support a broad array of applications. So I think the choice has already been made, and web scale is where everything's going, and whether web scale blurs with hyperscale supercomputing, you can debate that.
Jeff, we are
Unfortunately.
hitting a wall here. I would like to hand it over to Hugo to come up with the closing remarks here. And very sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah. Hugo.
Thank you, Frank. I think this was a wonderful 90 minutes overview of a Lustre development from a user perspective as well as from a developer perspective. Let me thank Frank and the members of the panel for an outstanding show they delivered here in the morning. Before we have to close, first of all, I would like to invite you, Galen mentioned it in the beginning, to our booth party at 4, EOFS booth party, together with OpenSFS. And then I would like to thank, for the last 10 seconds, members of OpenSFS as well as EOFS who left and were replaced by others. In EOFS we have Johannes Diemer leaving our board, and he was replaced by Frank Bethke. And also from OpenSFS, Stephen Sims as well as Norman Morse. I would like to thank them all for their contribution in the last couple of years. We would not be there without them. So I see you at 4 and again in 1 year here at the OpenSFS and EOFS breakfast meeting. Thank you so much for coming.